Okay, so today we're going to chat about how to focus on or how to know what to focus on for big results, whether it's like for an offer, an opt-in, whatever. I feel like there's so many things that are like trendy. And I just want to talk about like how does that make sense? How can you apply it? How can you know like what to use when, all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's just so helpful to kind of chat through that. Um, and really just break down what makes sense and why. I think like that's always so helpful. Like whenever I do these, I don't want to just be like, go do this. I want to be like, here's how I would think about this and why it might be helpful. Excuse me, to think about it this way in your own business. So that's kind of the lens through which we're going to talk about it. $100 gift card is our giveaway today. So you guys know we always do a giveaway as a thank you for being here. And today's $100 gift card. So any comment, any hi, your burn looks bad, whatever, all are entered to win. Just as a thank you for being here today. Okay, it's done. Let's dive in. So when I was making this live stream or like thinking about what I wanted to talk about and thinking about the title, the reason this one really came up for me is because I feel like like I had just had multiple conversations with clients where they're like, I hear this is really like a thing people are liking right now. What do you think? Hi, Michelle. Hi, Brittany. And I feel like it's always helpful to pay attention to like, oh, what are those questions? And then like, how can we talk about them here? Because if I'm hearing it multiple times, it usually means it's like on everyone's mind. And I feel like what I always say to clients that I want to like talk through here today is I feel like trends are really helpful to capitalize on, but they should be like the solution to a problem you've already identified and not something that you're trying to do kind of like on its own without a specific reason or purpose behind it. So, like, let's use the mini program thing. I feel like mini programs have been all the rage for a while, right? And it's like, that's great if the problem that you have to solve in your business is that you want to have a really, really strong set of nurtured leads for higher ticket, or maybe like you've only been selling much higher ticket and you realize like you need more leads coming in the door that you need to nurture more fully. Okay, amazing. Then a mini program or like a $99 offer or whatever might be the best thing that you can do in your business. For a lot of my clients that have higher end masterminds, doing something like that on the front end to nurture and to kind of like shrink the lead pool. So we know like, oh, okay, here are our warmest, most nurtured leads. Let's, really like focus a lot of our launch on that is a fantastic strategy. It's so useful. But if that wasn't your problem, right? And maybe like your problem is that, you don't have enough leads coming in the door. And so instead of going out and getting more leads, now you're building out this whole mini offer. Then you're trying to sell it to an audience that you haven't been cultivating or don't have enough leads for. You're going to be so fucking frustrated, right? And so, like, yes, mini programs can be cool, trendy, what people are liking. But if they're not solving that problem in your business, it literally doesn't matter how trendy they are. They're not actually going to help your business, right? Hey, Danielle, love this. Good. Hey, Laura. Brittany said I did a masterclass and it brought in 1,200, but I've been feeling into turning it into a longer term program over 2 months. Right. And so that's such a good point, right? Like you did a masterclass, it brought in $1,200. $1,200 is like amazing. It's nothing to sneeze at in business at all. But you want to be like, what does this do for me longer term? If I'm going to put that energy into something, what's the payoff? What problem does it solve? So I think that's such an important way to look at it, right? Because so many people will kind of put a lot of energy into these short-term things and they don't realize how much energy is going, and this isn't you, Brittany, obviously I'm just talking generally, but they won't realize how much energy is going into these things instead of being like, oh, okay, how can I use this thing to solve a problem in my business or get more of what I want? And so if what you want is like a longer term program or, more lifetime value from that client, et cetera, like then that could be great. Um, so I wanted to kind of start the conversation with bringing up like, let's think about stuff like that of like, do you know what the problem is in your business? And then can you leverage trends to potentially help you solve that instead of going, oh, I'm just supposed to be on top of these trends because this is what people are doing, and then trying to smash them into your business, so to speak. Because what happens when most people do that is they're like, why does this feel so hard? And it's like, because you're just kind of trying to randomly like jump to this thing instead of having picked a thing that you know is actually going to get you more of what you want or lead to the results that you want. And honestly, the same is true for an opt-in too. We can talk about that too. Um, Nikki said, if you were starting from scratch today, what would you focus on? Nikki, can you clarify for that? Like, do you mean me personally, like Lacey out of Lit Up Life, or do you mean like if I was like telling someone, like coaching someone new, like, hey, you're starting today, here's where I would start? I feel like I would answer that differently. So I just want to like clarify what you meant there. But happy to answer either. But I think opt-ins are the same, right? Like I feel like a lot of people will try to pick like the trendy thing, like, oh, okay, are people really into quizzes right now? Are quizzes trendy? Okay, let me build out this quiz opt-in or something. And it's like, well, a quiz opt-in works if you really, really specifically want to lead people to a certain number of options that push to something else. So for example, like a lot of my clients, if they serve people at different levels, let's say on their journeys, like whether that's like a different level of health and fitness journey or business or whatever, sometimes a quiz can be really helpful because it helps us bucket people, it helps us tag leads, it helps us see, okay, the majority of our leads that are coming in are falling into this bucket or they have this problem or whatever. And that can be so useful. For someone else, like that wouldn't be useful at all. Like, for example, I'll use Dateable. Like, we have one core offer right now. And we have no fucking need for a quiz. Like we have no need to bucket people or tag them as like interested in this versus this. So even if quizzes are like trendy, like we just wouldn't do that because it wouldn't make sense to solve a problem in our business. Like it would just lead people to three answers and then we would like randomly bring them all back to the same conclusion. Like, what's the point of that, right? And again, it's that idea of like, are we just solving for like what we're hearing or what's trendy or what? I talk too much with my hands to wear sweaters like this. Are we just going for like what's trendy, or are we going for what actually makes a difference, what makes sense for our business? Because sure, like something that's like, ooh, like quizzes are cool right now, as an example, right? Like that can create some interest. But if it doesn't actually funnel to a really solid way to create a buyer, who the fuck cares? And I just think we have to focus on that and remember that because it's so easy to get caught up in all of that. Like, oh, at Dateable, now we need a mini program and we need a whatever quiz funnel and blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't, right? Because that's not the problem we're trying to solve there. And so I just really want to like speak to that a little bit more. If you guys have specific examples in your own business or questions around this, we can get into this too. Feel free to put them in the comments. Hey, Lisa and Nikki, I see your question. I'll answer both. But the point that I really want to make on the first part of this is like, you have to know what problem you're trying to solve. So like with an opt-in, for example, are you like, we want people to come in and like immediately buy a course from us or something? Or are you like, oh, okay, what we're really trying to do is get people to come in and really warm up so that for our next launch, they're ready for X. Or we're trying to get people to come in and warm up and then eventually book a high ticket coaching call or whatever, right? Like you really want to understand what action are you trying to get them to take? What do you really want them to do? I feel like so few people actually put that thought into it. What they do is look at what everyone else is doing and then try to cram that into their business. And they wonder why it feels like choppy or frustrating or like it's not working. And that's almost always why. It's like, well, because you try to make a quiz and it doesn't fit at all the action you're trying to get people to take or what you're trying to get them to do. And so it does feel kind of clunky for you, for them. Like it's just not going to connect, right? Or it's like, you're trying to sell a program for this like higher level client or something like that, but a lot of people like this topic. And so you're talking about this topic, but it doesn't all align to this. But you are getting leads, so you think it's fine. Again, not the same thing. So anyway, I have more to say about that, but I want to ask or answer rather Nikki's question. So if I were starting over as me at a Lit Up Life, I mean, I would do what I did the first time, to be honest with you, which is I would just coach people because my goal is to be a one-on-one coach. So I would just naturally um, build relationships and coach people. And I know that that can sound so cheesy, but like what, like when I did that, gosh, how long have I been in business? 8 years ago. Did it look different? Sure. I probably wrote different type of content. I think I probably framed it and positioned it in a different way, etc. But same shit. Like I would just be like, who can I coach for free? Who can I serve? Who can I get on calls with? Who do I want to build relationships with? And I would just go super hard on that. Um, because if you want to be a one-on-one coach, say you need, say you're doing a 6-month container like I am, right? And even if none of your clients resign, say you're serving 20 clients every 6 months, you need 40 clients in a year. Like that's nothing. Like I wouldn't even focus on huge audience growth at that point. I mean, again, kind of same thing that I did with a Lit Up Life. Like I just focused on like connecting with people and coaching people, and it got me clients. And then once I had like a solid flow of clients, I obviously focused on audience growth to ensure that continued and for the future. And because I couldn't do as many free calls because I was serving clients, right? So then like the audience growth became more important in a different way because I needed them to kind of like warm up in a different way versus like getting on, 20 free calls in a week or something like that. But I would do the same shit for the most part. And again, that's because I know my goal and because I know my goal is that I want to do one-on-one. If that wasn't my goal, I would focus on audience building. Um, I think so many people focus on, and really what both show you is focus on the people and the relationships. I would probably do it in a different way, right? Like if my ultimate goal was like group programs or something like that, I would pick a platform and go all in on that and become an expert at marketing and creating content for that platform. I think it was easier for me when I started because it was all the platforms weren't as like specific. So you could just so easily repurpose in a way that I don't feel like you can now. I think platform specific content, if you really, really, really want it to perform, is important now. So I would just pick, like, I would either pick Instagram or TikTok, and I would go all in on feeling like I knew how to build those relationships and build an audience. I feel like at the beginning of business, so often people get so focused on like, what's the offer? And like get so like in the weeds about so much of this stuff, but they haven't ever like built someone to sell it to. Um, so I would do that first. And I think that that is difficult sometimes because it's almost like we're building something before knowing even what we're selling. And obviously that can feel a little hard sometimes because we want to like hit the ground running with selling and all of that. Um, and I might have even given, I probably would have given different advice on this even just like a couple of years ago. But I do think like the name of the game right now is like knowing that you know how to create attention and interest. If you can do that, it's pretty easy to like decide on your offer, put it together and sell it. If you can't do that, you could spend 100 years making your offer and it like wouldn't matter. And so I'm not saying I wouldn't do them like at the same time, but I'm saying if there was one thing I was making important, it would definitely be like knowing that marketing and people. Like I feel like if you know that you can create interest in your business, you have a bit of this like untouchable vibe that comes with it. If you don't feel like you know that and you feel like every way that you're getting clients is like an accident or happenstance or almost like coming out of thin air, you are going to feel so shit in your business because you're going to feel constantly like it's all a guess or it's all going to go away tomorrow, right? Um, so yeah, that's what I would focus on. And then I think the offer piece is easy from there in many ways. Like once you're out there creating content and talking to people, like it will be clear what they're asking for, what they're interested in, what they need, what they might want next. Like that starts to flow pretty effortlessly. Um, yeah, usually the correct answer is the simplest. Isn't that true? Hey, Deborah, thank you. Michelle said so true about how each of the platforms very much has its own unique thing now, whereas a few years ago that wasn't the case fully. That part is so different, like so different compared to like what it was like when I started for sure. Kate said, hey, Kate. And you can always do small pivots with offers as you listen to your people, audience, and leads. Exactly. Like once you know how to connect with your audience and your people, like so easy to do other things. Make other offers for them, create something new, adjust. Like it really gets exciting. When you don't have that solidified yet, I think it feels so hard. And even your offers feel like a guess then at that point, because you probably are going to evolve them once you connect more and grow more and all of that kind of stuff. Um, Elisa said that's so interesting about prioritizing audience growth over clarity. I feel the same right now. I feel like once you connect to your people, you can also chat with them, yep, about what they actually need instead of guessing in your own little bubble. 100%. I mean, I knew I wanted to do one-on-one, right, as a coach. But even just like getting on all those calls at the beginning and coaching a bunch of people and stuff, like that just made it so easy for me to then figure the rest out. Like, oh, what could I include in my program? What are they looking for? What could I say on my sales page? All of that stuff. Like, it's so confirming to have those conversations, and it's so much easier than like sitting in your own little bubble, as Elisa said, and like trying to fill out your ideal client worksheet when you like never talked to a client or you never created content that they could engage with or whatever. I mean, it's just so much harder. Emma said, any suggestions for if you're creating content and maybe people are liking it, but it's not giving any more clarity about the problem you need to solve? Let me try to process that. It's not giving any more clarity about the problem you need to solve. Emma, can you just, sorry, I feel confused on if you mean like you're not getting more clarity from their responses to that, or you feel like you can make content they like, but it's not helping them actually solve a problem. Tell me what you mean there, because I would love to answer that. Um, Kate said, building the audience first was how I always accidentally started new businesses. Write about the things I love, get lots of questions, make solutions. Yes, totally. I mean, I think that's so much how it is. I have a couple clients that have really, really big um, Instagram accounts and on very, very, very niche specific topics. And what's so interesting about like their origin story and hearing their backstory is they started because they just had a passion and an interest about something, and now it's grown into this like huge thing on its own. And I'm not saying it always has to be that way or that we can't be strategic about wanting to start a business, but I do think there's really, really, really something to be said for what it looks like to just start talking to people first, just start talking about what you're interested in, how sometimes that is the thing that absolutely takes off, like in this really kind of like unpredictable, exciting way. So I agree with you so much, Kate. I'm not getting clarity from the responses, so I feel like I'm still just guessing. I mean, what I would say in that case then, Emma, is like you probably just need to talk to them more. Like if you still feel confused, like I think you can always go deeper there. So it's like if you're, oh, well, here, let me see what else you said. I posted on LinkedIn several times where most of my audience is basically asking for input so I can better understand the real problem in the market, but haven't gotten much response yet. So what I would say there is one of two things. One is either they don't actually know what the problem is, which is very possible. Like I think there is less problem awareness in our industry now than there has ever been. For context, you know, I was talking earlier about like when I started, it was so different, like in terms of platforms. Another thing that was really different when I started is people had more problem awareness then. Like I started by coaching a lot around content, and like I didn't have to work that hard for people to go, oh, I need help with content. Like it was people just had more problem awareness because there just wasn't so much shit coming at them. And so most people were like, oh, I need better content, or I need a content plan or whatever. Like I didn't have to create as much problem awareness back then. Like it just was more obvious. I don't know how else to say that. Um now I feel like it is so overwhelming. There's 5,000 solutions. People are so confused about what their problem is. So if you're asking like, hey, let me understand this problem better, and even they don't understand it, that could be part of the issue, truly. And so having deeper conversations with people, I think, is really worth it. Like if you have a few people who you know your content has been clicking for, I would just ask them if they're willing to do a market research call and see what you can give them in return for that. And just pick their brains and see where they're at. Like, I feel like anytime you're like, I'm at this level of connection with them and I'm still getting so confused, what else can I do? That's just such a good way to do it, is be like, okay, let me take our connection one step deeper. Like, oh, okay, we're connecting on Instagram. Let's have a call. Or, oh, okay, like, they've made a comment here. Maybe I'm going to send them a voice note there. Like, just, try to take it further. There was one other thing I was going to say on that. What was it? Oh, in terms of the problem awareness thing too, another thing I was going to say there is, I don't know how you're asking for it, so like this could not be it too, but I also think like creating really easy ways for them to answer that, and ways that don't feel like they're outing themselves or having to say that publicly or having to name their problems in any way that doesn't feel completely anonymous, is also something that I think people get really weird about. So that's something to think about too. Um, Nikki said totally what I was going to say, Emma. So many people don't know what they actually need, but with the one-on-one questions, you can get to the root. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's like not because they don't want to. It's like it's truly just confusing. Kate said, I wondered too if that has to do with the rise of more of a creator style model of relating primarily as a strategy for audience building. I think so for sure. I think you're spot on too. Like I think it's that we're talking about problems in a different way. I think we used to very much have more of like a teacher philosophy, and now I think we have more of like a relational style that is working better. And so we're less like pointing out big problems and stuff like that. So I think it's more confusing. And then two, I just think there's more saturation, more offers out there too. It doesn't mean oversaturate or that it's a problem, but I do think it means there are just way more offers out there. So it's not like, again, it's just like they don't know. It's like, today I read something that makes me think content my problem is my problem. And yesterday I read something that made me think my offer is my problem. And the day before, I mean, that's why I get so obsessed with data, because I'm like, well, data will just tell you what your problem is. Stop looking at everyone else's content and trying to dissect it. Just go look at your own and figure out what your problem actually is. But I mean, it can be confusing as fuck, especially because a lot of it tracks. It's almost like, how when, this is how I think about it sometimes, how when you like have symptoms, if you go online and you Google it, and then all of a sudden you have 30 things and they're all horrible, and you can kind of relate to all of it because so many of it is just like normal shit. Like I feel fatigued and, I don't feel, as much energy as I wish I did, or like I get headaches sometimes, or like all this stuff. And it could mean like absolutely nothing, or it could be like this horrible thing. I kind of feel like it's the same thing in the online space to a certain extent, where like everyone's speaking to like, oh, you're not getting as many clients as you'd like. Well, I mean, most people I know would like more clients, even if they're making 7 figures plus, you know what I mean? And so they're kind of speaking to these generalized issues, right? And they have this like super specific strategy to solve it, and da 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 da. And so like if you're reading that, all of a sudden you think you have all these problems and identify it, just like whatever, I think I have these 20 ailments from Googling my symptoms, right? Kate says, yes, no one tells you how to know if that's your problem. They just tell you it's the thing you need to fix. Bingo. Emma said, Lacey, I think data is my thing too, and I'm trying to get to the heart of what's stopping so many business owners from using data in their business. I obviously have lots of reasons. Serious people have told me, but want to get more input. I mean, I think the thing is too, is like, there's always going to be a ton of reasons someone doesn't want to do anything. I think data has a ton of them in terms of like barriers. Obviously, I know this well. But I think when the outcome is worth it enough to them, barriers get overcome. So that might also be something you want to think about exploring, more or less like, what are their barriers at this moment? And more like, what do they want enough that it makes it worth it to jump over them? Nikki said, I think also because there are so many people that say this course will solve your problem. And then when it doesn't, for one reason or another, people will spin out and be like, okay, that's not my problem. It must be something else. Totally. I also think what happens with courses too is like, I'm trying to think of how I want to explain it. Like people will take a course and they'll be like, I already knew that. Oh my God, this is not the answer to my problem. I fucking knew that. Right. And it's like, there's a difference between did you know that and have you fully and completely implemented this in your business? And I feel like that's also what's missing for so many people. And so we're really jaded on like shit we know, but we really haven't implemented most of it. And so I feel like that's such a big part of it too, is like, I feel like I'm not even, I just remembered, I'm like, oh, I think this was live stream is about something totally different, but this is a great conversation. We're going to keep it going, but I promise I will circle back with a point at the end. But I do think it's easy to get so jaded on like, I know all this shit, but I see this percentage of business owners actually doing most of that. And so I think that's also what makes it hard, like, especially like when you're trying to tell people almost like go back to the foundations, like it's so unsexy because they think they know it. I think data is actually similar in some sense there too, Emma, where like I feel like so many people will tell me like, oh, I look at my numbers and I'm like, oh, okay, what's your funnel conversion rate? And they're like, huh, huh. And I'm like, okay, so you don't know your numbers actually, right? But it's like we feel like we know all these things because we've read about it or heard about it or listened to it or whatever. But like because we're not implementing it, it just makes us more jaded. Um, this also works to test if like something enough to pursue it and takes the income pressure off a new thing. It's fun too, but also realizing not everything has to be a business is the thing I have to wrestle with a lot. Yeah, I hear that, Kate. Yes, right. Lisa said, wondering about your take on speaking to what people want in content, sales pages, etc. I feel like for so long as business coaches, we only spoke to make 5K months, 10K months, etc. And that was all that worked. And now I feel like that has shifted because we are a bit fed up with that. I personally think that we still want the like basic bitch shit because we have lizard brains and that's how that works, right? Like, I think what makes us jaded about like hearing 10K months or whatever is because we feel like we've tried all the things to get there and aren't getting it, or because it feels like we've heard all of the stuff about that. And so I think like the truth is that is still what people want. I just think that we have to be able to speak to it in a way that cuts through some of that bullshit that feels like I've heard all of that. I've tried all of that. That didn't work for me. That's not as easy as it gets made out to be, whatever. And so I don't think it's like so much changing the conversation from like, hey, make this much or something like that. But I think it's like, how are you speaking to what's really alive for people in that now, which is that they feel like they need a different path, or they feel like they've tried it all, or they feel like, the idea that they got sold that that's like possible is bullshit or whatever. But at the end of the day, still think like if someone's hiring a business coach, it's because they want to make more money in their business. And I think when we shy too much away from that, we're doing a disservice to ourselves too, because like that's what they're buying at the end of the day, right? Like I think my clients get a load of things in terms of like support and safety and presence and blah, 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 blah. I could go on and on, but like that's not what they're buying. Like when a client hires me, the fundamental thing that they want to do is make more money. And so I think it's about finding a way to speak to that doesn't still feel like bullshit or trigger their bullshit radar, but still does name like the, again, like basic bitch kind of stuff that they want. And I think there's like a really fine line with that in our industry right now, for sure. But I always get a little iffy when I hear people say, like, oh, don't speak to 10K months anymore. People are over that. I'm like, they're not. Everybody wants that. What they're over is what they perceive to be the bullshit around it. And that's what I think we have to cut through. Personal opinion, obviously, but yeah, I think if you're a business coach, like nobody's over 10K months. Like, really. Do you know what I mean? Like that is what it's kind of like in the um, health and fitness realm. Like, obviously, I think there's like such a different way that we're speaking to like weight loss or fitness or health than maybe we were a few years ago. But at the end of the day, like, people don't actually want something that's all that different. It's just like, how are we speaking to it? Yes, that's perfectly said, Elisa. Basic bitch needs without the BS. Yes, love that. Hey Julia, it's good to see you. Love all your takes. Is the video available after the live is over? Yeah, totally. We pin it like to the top of the group. And then when we unpin it, like for the next week or whatever, it's still on my website too. So yeah, you can get it anytime. Um, so yeah, I feel like obviously like there's like a shift in how we want to be spoken to and marketed to, but I don't think the outcomes we want have really changed all that much. Kate said completely agree with you, or completely with you, sorry, on the basic bitch stuff, and the BS people have around it is perfect content and funnels and all that too. Yeah, exactly. Like that, I think when we recognize like, oh, that's the issue, not this. Again, it's just like back to solving the right problem, which was like the whole point of this live stream anyway. Is when you're like, oh, the problem isn't 10K months. The problem is what people perceive to be all the fake bullshit around it. Okay, I can solve for that. Or like the problem isn't whatever, that like tech is scary with data. The problem is they don't understand what data can do for them enough to actually be worth dealing with the tech, right? Because like, for example, funnels are incredibly tech complicated, but most people see the value in having an automated funnel enough that they figure out the tech. So I think, obviously, listen, I fully fight this fight at Dateable all the time, so I get it, but I just think that's like a good example of like, there's usually another problem. And again, same with your offers, same with your opt-ins. Like, if you shy too much away from like, oh, we don't do offers like this anymore, or this is the off type of offer we do or whatever, like you just get so screwed in that because you're kind of constantly moving with the industry flow instead of actually solving the right problem for your business. So for me, like one-on-one has been in and out of style, let's say, I don't know, 8 times in the 8 years I've been doing this. I mean, I'm kind of not even kidding. Um, you know, there was a period of time where one-on-one was like it was like the thing, it was like what everybody wanted. Then there was a period of time where everyone thought like one-on-one wasn't that great and they all wanted masterminds and it was like only helpful if it was in a mastermind setting and so on and so forth. And then like one-on-one kind of came back around and then people really wanted one-on-one. And then I feel like people pulled back from that and just wanted like to-dos and someone to just give them a process and to be able to plug and play the process. And then it kind of shifted back. So like if I had shifted my business that many times, I would be an insane person, probably making very little money right now, if we're being real. Right. But being able to go, okay, cool. Well, I don't want to solve the problem of giving someone like an exact step-by-step formula because that is not my skill set. And so even though that would probably like sell well and is so trendy right now, like I'm gonna go stay in my lane. And I know it's going to eventually swing back around. And in the meantime, I'm going to sell to the people who aren't on the trend. Um, but I mean, that's kind of what's nice about a trend is you can always like push against that if you're doing the opposite. So like when that, step by step, this is like, you need plug and play kind of stuff. Like I just can use that in my marketing. I can be like, oh, okay, well, like I don't believe in that. And here's why I believe in one-on-one instead. And it just gives me this kind of edge with which to lean into with my marketing. And so I really would encourage you around that, like build the thing that makes sense for what you want and know that the trends come and go, kind of the same thing with like the marketing we were talking about, right? Like what you want is a prime audience. All the other stuff is going to come and go. If you can build a prime ready audience that you know how to capture attention with, the world is your oyster in business. If you don't have that, it's really hard. Or even the 10K months, if you can speak to what people want and not get so caught up in the trends of like, it's cool to speak to money, it's not, it gets so much easier. And so that's really the point I wanted to make today. It's so easy to see all these trends go up and down, right? And we will continue to forever. But if you can just make these slight adjustments and or capitalize on them when it's appropriate for you, it's really, really easy to do well in business. If you're making really big adjustments based on all of these things, and you're constantly changing up your business, just know you're going to be constantly changing up your business. There's not one trend that's going to hit that everybody sticks with. I am of no like fantasy land that one-on-one isn't going to be a thing I have to really push to people again at some point. I think it's kind of having a moment now again because people are kind of over all the bullshit. But like that's probably going to change again soon. Like I have no fantasy that it won't, but what I know I will stay good at is the foundational stuff. I know whatever trend comes, I will push against that in favor of one-on-one. I know that I will still work to have a really strong relationship with my audience and to keep figuring that out. I know I'll pay attention to industry trends and be able to tweak my content for that without tweaking entire like offers. So I think that that's really the thing to remember. I was going to say something else on that. What was it? I just had it in my brain and it left. I know. It doesn't mean you can't ever tweak an offer. That's not what I'm saying either. Obviously, I feel like I'm kind of like a rare bird in having the same one for so long. And that's not right or wrong. It just kind of is what it is. But it's not like don't change an offer ever, but it's like change it for the right reasons. I think that that's what most people miss is like they're just doing it for a reason that sounds a lot like because it's what everyone else is doing or because it's what people are wanting to buy right now. And that usually backfires. If you have a much better reason, like because this is where our business is moving, or because this extends our client lifetime value, or because, we really want to rework our client journey and this is going to give clients better results that makes them more likely to convert and da, 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 you might definitely want to tweak your offer. Like I'm not saying don't ever by any means, but what I am saying is unless the reason is specific to your business, it's probably not a good enough reason. um, Same with like the 10K months thing as the example. Thank you for bringing that up, Elisa, because I feel like that's a great level point for this is like, if not selling 10K months as a result makes sense for your business, great, shift that. If you're doing that because you think the industry is having this pushback on it or something, like that's the thing to stop yourself and be like, wait a second, what's really happening here and what's the actual problem to solve? Because I feel like it's just so easy to get caught up in all that shit, but it just changes so fast that you end up constantly chasing your tail. It's like something changed, you spend all this time to update it and get on board with it. And then before you even get your footing there, it's changed again. And you're just chasing. And it is such an exhausting way to do business, right? Like you build this whole opt-in and, this kind of ebook is trendy or whatever. And then by the time you get that working over here, you're hearing that everybody's moving to whatever, like quizzes, it's just crazy making. And typically that's ends up with someone who feels like they're doing an incredibly significant amount of work in their business without results that match that. Kate said for sure shift marketing to market trends, not your whole business. Fast track to burnout and confusing your audience 100%. And you're like chasing a ghost, right? Like you're chasing the idea that somehow you're going to land on one thing that sticks. And that's not real. Like in our industry, there will never be one thing that sticks. You have to be willing to adjust around that. And like Kate said, shift your marketing, not your entire business. So I hope that helps. That's all I got for today. If you guys have other questions as you watch, obviously, or replays, let me know. We will give away that $100 gift card as a thank you for being here. I love, love, love having you guys come. I felt like this was such a fun one to kind of like, obviously we had so many side conversations to this bigger conversation. I feel like the community conversations like that are like exactly what I'm here for. So thank you for participating in that. It truly means so, so much to me. I can't even tell you. So thank you guys. This was a fun one. I hope you guys have a beautiful week. Bye, y'all.